Can you tell us a little bit about what is employee listening and what are people saying about it these days?
So I actually have a question for you two before I
Oh no.
start.
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh.
I'm curious, what do you think of when you think of employee listening? Like, what does that mean to you?
I'll go. I'll go. Why not? Employee listening, I think about it in terms of getting the voice of your customer, i.e., the employees, and just staying attuned to their sentiments, their reactions, and this sort of thing. Funny enough, I had a conversation with someone about GDPR in another country some time ago, and they took a very different approach. Like, listening? What are you doing listening to your employees?
Yeah. What
Uh-oh.
if I'm being like hyper literal? I honestly, when I first heard the concept, I thought it was kind of like how people always assume that IO psychologists are like organizational therapists and we're just having like listening sessions to hear people's problems, which I guess is kind of what it is in a way. But really, like nowadays, it's mostly surveys and then passive techniques. It's really those two things, from what I can tell. People always say it's like, oh, it's town halls and it's employee communications and all, and it rarely ever is. But tomato, tomato. What do you think, Emily?
Yeah.
No, that's awesome. So you both touched on how what I like to describe as being two core aspects of my job. So when I talk about employee listening, in my role specifically, I think of two things. The first are the surveys. So Cole, you touched on that. We partner with Glint to do enterprise-wide pulse surveys, life cycle surveys to catch onboarding and exit sentiment, stuff like that, pretty standard. But then we also have this other kind of my other side of the house we call the voice of the employee. So you had mentioned that, Scott. It's a collection of active and passive data sources that are geared to give us employee sentiment data in between our pulse surveys. So all together, these two things work in conjunction to gather data on the employee experience. And when I say employee experience, I know that could also mean a lot of different things. So the way we think about it, especially with like an IO lens, is attitudes around career goals, engagement, job satisfaction, all of these important attitudes and perceptions that lead to on the job behavioral outcomes.